So let's see, we left off yesterday with, we're talking about the flow of air with the supercharger. So we said the fuel air mix is drawn in the center of the compressor from the carburetor fuel injection, thrown outward in the diffuser, which provides better air distribution. Then from the diffuser, it goes in the intake pipes, then off into the cylinders. Supercharger is usually mounted at the rear. Mounted in the rear of the engine. Rear of the engine, or between the power section and the accessory section on the radial. And accessory section. In a radial.
This one's all smudgy.
What? It's smudgy?
Oh.
You know why? It's somebody probably got tangled up in the wires yesterday.
Yeah.
And now the ceiling.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Damn it, Brian.
Hey!
You
guys that try harder.
Let me see. Some engines.
It's sitting in that seat. It's too close for too long.
Some engines, like the Pratt & Whitney R2800, as an example, use a 2-speed compressor. So at the low speed, it's 7.29 to 1. And high speed, .5 to 1 to as much as 9.45 to 1. So you speed it up. Why would you speed it up?
Make more power.
There you go. More boost. Well, why not just have it run high speed all the time?
Because you don't want that power all the time.
I wouldn't say we don't want all the power all the time.
How about
All
it's
that
denser?
temperature boost.
Temperature, too much boost. You exceed the boost limits. You exceed manifold pressure. So when you're down low and they have high density, you're not going to want to boost it that much. So because, and this is what's going to make your life easy right here. So because the compressor is directly tied to RPM, there is no need for additional controllers. So in other words, you don't have to worry about, other than your 2-speed, if you go back, say, to a single speed, you don't necessarily have to worry about boost. There's no controllers, right? Like I told you about the guy with the 185. What was his controller to limit his boost?
Oh god.
The throttle.
The throttle. Yeah.
Just don't push in so far, right? So if you watch your manifold pressure and you've got a red line on there, you want me to wait for you, Daniel? You good? All right, keep going. I just know if I should wait. This is no, I keep going.
She said it's fine.
She's okay, good. Well, tell her I said hi. Sorry.
Lost track.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Because there's a side of me that's like, I don't really care, but then this side's like, it's distracting. So sorry. That's why there's that confusion in me. Okay, so the 185, so if you look at your manifold pressure and you've got a red line on your manifold and you can't exceed it, just increase the throttle until you get to the red line, then stop. Don't go anymore. There's no other controllers. Right? And there's nothing you can control other than that. It's not like you can slow down the supercharger. It's bolted onto something. Although if you watch, was that Mad Max where they had the supercharger that started and stopped? I don't think that works that way.
Mad
Chris?
Max. I know what you're talking about, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes you'd see like the
I don't
older
remember
movies.
which one it was, but yes, I know what you're talking about.
Yes, they would have a supercharger on top of the car. You know,
Oh.
normally it's sitting still, but then when I go fast, you hit the button and it starts going.
It starts going.
Yeah, which doesn't make a lot of sense when you think about the fact that it looks like.
I mean,
Because you have like a disengage.
Like a clutch?
you could have a clutch,
From
but
AC.
that would be
Yeah, but if it
so
looks like
much
this
better.
on the inside of that, and your carburetor's sitting up here, and it's a downdraft,
Oh.
so how exactly does the fuel air get around that to get through? There's my problem.
Bypass valve.
Yes,
No.
you make these out of rubber. They just flop.
Yeah, they just flop over.
Anyway, that's probably shouldn't be the thing that I focus in on about that movie, which I don't remember at all other than that. So, all right. So I'm just saying there's no other controllers. And so we can be done with that. This is how it works. Which is great, except now we're going to talk about turbos, where it doesn't work that way. And that gets really complicated.
Oh, fun.
So that was the easy part. All right, so 6. Turbocharger. It's probably not 6. We'll just call it turbocharger.
Yep, it is.
Oh, is it? Well,
Yeah, it's
look at
number
that.
6.
Okay. All right.
Internal supercharger.
A turbocharger. That's an external compressor driven by a turbine wheel that gets power from
Exhaust.
exhaust gases. External compressor driven by a turbine wheel that gets power from exhaust gas. Where else have you heard of such a device whereby you have some sort of turbine wheel on one end that is driven by expanding hot gases that has a shaft that drives a compressor?
It almost sounds like what Phil taught us.
Almost.
Almost.
Not quite.
So very similar, and the parts would look the same, just in miniature. Yeah, in fact, don't they have like YouTube videos and stuff where people actually make jet engines out of
Yes.
just turbochargers?
Yes.
What? No way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. There's someone who strapped one of them onto the back of the scooter.
Yes.
Iron Man, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, Colin. Yeah. Oh, he's got some great. Have you ever heard of Colin Ferris?
No.
Oh man,
Colin Mocker.
he's got some crazy rocket stuff.
Colin Farrell?
Colin. Yeah.
Colin.
Something like that.
Same guy?
Yeah.
There's another guy.
Oh, this is what we're going to do now? Cool. You let me know when you're done talking about YouTube stuff. Go ahead. I'll explain here.
Make a jet engine out of
That's what we do the next 2 days.
Video if you want.
We can talk about this, talk about that. I don't care. It's, it's our time. What are you guys in the mood for? That other thing, but we know we got to do this. Yeah. I'm in the mood for the YouTube. Thanks for asking. Okay, so there we go. This is your basic design right here. We've got the exhaust gases come out of this. It's like, where do you start, right? So we'll start here at the cylinder. Exhaust gases come out, and they go through the Wastegate. See, because it looks like a Y, if you like that. So it goes through the Wastegate, and with a Y, and you have a wastegate. And so when the wastegate is closed, then it's going to send the exhaust gas up to the turbine wheel. When the wastegate is open, more air will flow through the wastegate, and less will flow across the turbine wheel, cause the turbine wheel to turn slower. Now, and I'll write this later, but the wastegate is never all the way closed, and it's never all the way open to the point where it touches stuff. You don't want it to, but it's never all the way closed. Let's just say that. And the reason why is because you always want the turbine wheel moving no matter what, because if you hot exhaust gas, there's enough here to just heat that and warp it and ruin it. So you always want it rotating so that it has equal heat going through it. But anyway, the exhaust gas comes up through here, goes the turbine wheel, and then out, which drives the compressor. Compressor picks up through the air intake. We have between here and here, we have the upper deck. From here to here, manifold goes across there into the cylinders where it makes more power and repeats the process. That's all it is. really, in truth, that's it. I mean, we could actually stop right there and say, well, that's the turbocharger, except for this whole wastegate business. And like we talked about a second ago,
He's trying to take a picture.
Trying to get a picture of this.
you want me to stand there with it?
I would love
You want one with me in it? Yeah. You want to get up here too? You and I can do.
Next time we're gonna hung it out. You can both sit matching Facebook profile pictures.
Yeah. Like we talked about with the supercharger, it's tied to the engine, so therefore, as the engine spins faster, it spins faster, and so you have that locked in, and so you can actually just engineer it out. Say, okay, we need a compressor this big and at this RPM and at this altitude, everything's going to work. Well, unlike that, this turbine or turbocharger is going to turn completely independent, right? And so we wouldn't normally be able to slow it down or speed it up except for the fact we have the wastegate. Well, now we got to control the wastegate. And there are different ways of doing it, and really the whole study of this is almost going to be around how do we operate the wastegate and the controllers that actuate that. And that becomes the difficult part, and it's not that difficult, it just is what it is. There we go, there's cutaway.
So you said the rear turbine shaft turns independently from the compressor.
No,
Okay.
it's locked together.
Okay.
The turbocharger is independent of the engine.
Okay.
So there you can see there's nothing locked to the engine.
Okay. So. Never mind.
Unlike the supercharger that is locked to the engine, that it's turning at an exact speed based on the engine.
Then why do you need an exhaust to go to the turbine wheel at all if the compressor is still getting air intake?
that. No, that's gonna be my question.
From air intake.
Okay, so if we eliminated the turbine
Yes.
and we just put this compressor right here
Yes.
on some bearings, as the air comes in, it would not get compressed.
It's just gonna.
It would just sit there. It'd spin the little compressor, but
Okay.
that would not compress any air.
It's like putting a fan blade in your air intake.
It's
There you
a
go.
restriction. Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be a restriction. So this turbine wheel spins this very fast and compresses the air.
Much faster than the engine spins.
So
Yes.
is that also?
Oh yeah, at insane speeds.
Oh yeah.
So two questions. Why do we need the wastegate line? Why don't we just send all of the exhaust to the turbine?
Okay, excellent question. If we sent all of the exhaust to the turbine, we would have no way to control it.
It would always
You would
stay
have
at-
all the boost all the time.
It's like,
All boost on.
yeah, if you had a switch, it'd be turbo on, and there's no way to turn it off
Why don't superchargers have wastegates?
because they don't need them because they're tied to the engine.
Oh, okay.
So the turns at an exact speed of the engine.
You slow it down.
And so
it's
you
left.
could engineer it out and say, I need a compressor this exact size at this RPM to do exactly what I want. Or I have one this size, I just need to spin it exactly like that. But this is spinning free. And so it's going to try and do work there. When you get into second year, I don't know, I'm thinking about this, they're just so cool. Air cycle machines. They use these in an air. So an air cycle machine is an air conditioner. So I probably shouldn't get into this, but you actually use something that looks just like that to do work to extract heat energy out of the air, and they're really cool. It's like, oh, it's a turbine and a compressor. It's a turbocharger, but it works backwards, and it's kind of cool. But anyway, you'll get to that. All right, so there we go. Thankfully, they painted the cold side blue and the hot side red. So that means this must be the
Hot side.
hot side. Turbo, come in here, blast against there, exhaust out, turns the turbo, a shaft that goes through, you got the bearings. As we're going to talk about, one of the main problems with turbochargers is the fact that you're blowing exhaust across here, which is about how hot? Give me a number.
12,
12,
100.
a little higher than 12.
14.
Yeah, we're talking about 1,500 degrees. It's very, and where does oil coke again?
Or
Yeah, We'll get to that because I don't remember the number offhand. So we've got this very, very hot area where oil is going to be put through here, and the oil cokes. And if the oil cokes, it's going to seize up and ruin all of that. So we've got to have oil force fed through here, constantly flowing. So we'll talk about all that. Just things to look for. Just another picture right there.
And it's another spot where the engine gains heat from the oil flowing through too.
Yep. Okay, let's see what we got to say about all this now. Basic operation. That sounds like a good place to go. Basic operation. Turbo spins make power. The inlet. Yeah, I'm out. Inlet air travels from cowling inlet. Boy, I'm really going to go deep here, I guess. Inlet through air filter. Through air filter, and then from air filter to compressor. And in the center of the compressor, because it's a centrifugal compressor. Air is pressed outward by centrifugal force to outside of housing and compressed. So air is pressed outward by centrifugal force. Outward by centrifugal force to outside of the, well, that doesn't, if I say the outside of the housing, I'm just going to leave that because the rest of it says to outside of housing and compressed. Like, so how does it get outside the housing and how does it
Outside of the inside.
Yeah, so I'm just going to say air is pressed towards by centrifugal force outward. There we go. I think everybody.
Outward.
Centrifugal force. There we go. Yep, I already got that. Okay, so we're good there. Let's see here. From compressor. From compressor through the throttle body. Through throttle body. Through the throttle body, or fuel control unit if you like. So as it leaves the compressor, it's clean, dry air in theory. Right? It's been through an air filter, has not had any fuel, oil, or anything else. So it's pretty good air in theory. Which means that we can then attach a sonic venturi to it. That sonic venturi is going to have a duct that goes into the cabin. So there's our cabin pressurization right there. So not only are you compressing the air for the engine, but you're compressing it for the cabin. And you notice the sonic venturi. It's funny. It's a venturi shape. That's the name, sonic venturi. And there's nothing attached right here in the little venturi part. It's really just a restriction to keep all of the air from going into the cabin, so you have some for the engine.
How often is that air filter changed?
Well, it's your air filter for the engine. So I change it every annual 100 hours, or when it's dirty. But no more than every annual.
Well, that's the only way it's directed by manual.
Yes. Let's see. Okay, and then we got. Oops, what I missed something? 3, 4 from compressor. 5, there we go. Okay, from fuel control unit, from throttle body / FCU, fuel control unit, from fuel control unit, through manifold to cylinders. So then it's burned in the cylinders and then combustion. combustion air, which would be exhaust. We'll call it exhaust. There we go. Enters exhaust. Exhaust pipe. Let me think. And flows to the Y, which is not spelled that way. It's W-Y-E, through the Y.
Is it really?
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
From the Y, some gas flows over the turbine wheel to drive the compressor. The remainder of the gases then flow out the exhaust. I feel like I could have added something in there. Obviously, you're going to hit the Y, and some of it's going to go through the wastegate out. You don't always have to have a wastegate, though. Some systems don't have a wastegate.
So what
How does
would
that
be
work then?
there then?
Well, it's still going to have a Y, though. But instead of a wastegate, you'll have, for lack of a better name, a waste bolt. Just says bolt. And the bolt is just part of the restriction going out. They've just kind of figured it out. It's the most, the simplest of.
So it's
So
it's
how
not
does it adjust?
it's not adjusted.
It doesn't really. It's kind of a one-stop adjustment. You know, somebody set it up, put it all together, ran it. Getting a little bit too much boost. Go ahead and give me a little, tighten the bolt in a little bit more, and then, there we go. Restricted air, good to go.
Can you just adjust with the throttle then?
Yep,
For
and
how
you just
much
run in the
boost you
throttle
get?
from there.
Okay.
Piper Senecas do that.
Can you adjust it with that bolt as well? Or
Well, it's adjusted at the factory when it's set, and I wish you the best of luck to adjust it after that.
okay.
Because you know what it's like to try and do exhaust bolts. So if you get one about that big around, it's really welded itself in there.
You gotta get that Milwaukee impact wrench.
Lots of moose milk.
You can go on too many TikToks.
Components.
2,000 foot.
Well, you got the turbocharger. That's important. All right, so modern turbo housings are made of Inconel. Inconel. Where have we heard that stuff before?
Fire protection. Fire protection.
Oh yeah, same stuff as exhaust valves. Also the fire detection loop. Very good. Well, now I can just abbreviate since you all have the T-shirt.
Say it.
That's what it stands for.
Turbine temperature.
There we go. Same stuff. Can reach as high as 1650. Maybe more. All right, we got precision balanced rotating shaft with radial flow turbine. Starting to sound like Phil's class now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Precision balanced rotating shaft. I hope you guys know every time we cover something and then you get into the next class with another teacher and you have an oral and you don't get the question right, every single time they come up to me and let me know that you didn't get the question right.
Like, the
Like-
other day when I heard,
Oh, what's that?
I heard with Zach and them in that, their group.
Yeah. Oh, Oh yeah, because you're working right next to
I
him.
was working right next to him, and I heard it. Then Phil's like, "So, Kevin."
Yeah,
Nothing, it was bad.
they're working on AC,
Something
polyphase
about frequency or something.
frequency. Yay, you guys had electricity. Remember frequency?
Yes.
Yeah. They were like, I don't remember frequency.
It's up.
It's up and down. Precision balance rotating shaft with the radial flow turbine. Radial flow turbine on one end and a centrifugal compressor on the other. All right, turbos spin. They're pretty fast. Turbos spin from about 2,000 to 125,000 RPM. That is an intriguing number. That is 2,083 revs per second. I had to count one once. It was which
Sitting there
is
with their clicker.
I did, but I finally got a clicker because I kept losing count at around 1,500, and I'm like, damn it.
Damn it.
I had to count it like 5 times, which was 5 seconds, because I was counting for revolution per second. So every
Yeah.
time I had to start over again. So. But I'm a good counter. I counted to infinity twice.
Really? That's really good. That's good. Yeah.
That is impressive.
I don't know anyone else who's done that.
Okay, has a pressure oil fed plain bearing.
Kind of like the ones in an engine.
Running the crankshaft. Sounds very familiar here. Let's talk about that. So pressure, so constant oil pressure is critical. Kind of like the crankshaft. Let me see. Where are we going to get this oil?
From the oil pump.
Not the oil sump.
The oil pump.
Yes. Oil is supplied by the engine-driven pump. By engine. Oil pump. The same one that feeds the engine. It is reduced, if it needs to be, to 30 to 50 psi at a rate of about 1 to 2 quarts per minute. And if need be, the oil can be returned by a scavenge pump, if need be. Otherwise, you can just go back in the engine.
Is it separate
Like-
from the scavenge pump and the?
Well, like Continental's already running this. Some of them are already running dry sump. Dry sump's already running a scavenge pump, so if you need to, there you go.
And
Otherwise,
the scavenge pump is it like directly on the turbo or is it?
no,
It's
engine driven.
just the-
Engine driven. There's more we could talk about. Oil it's like a huge thing, and I think I have more notes in here. But I'll just mention it now in case I don't buffer it later. So, mechanics, pilots who like their airplane and want to keep it, are aware, at least, of the oil issues here. And we talked about, because your turbine is so hot, when we shut down, Yeah, oil cokes when it's heated above 300 degrees Celsius, or it's 575 Fahrenheit, and we're already talking about temperatures that are 1,000 degrees higher than that in the Fahrenheit range. So you imagine, if you will, you've just flown in from Los Angeles in your turbocharged aircraft. You've been up at altitude, you drop down in, downwind, base, final, and you land out here, taxi right up, shut it down.
Oh, that's very bad.
That's really hard on them. So it's not that uncommon to be at an airport where you're kind of sitting there having your lunch or whatever, and somebody, the turbocharged plane just rolls up and they sit there. And they sit there and they run it for quite a while, a good 5 minutes. Like, oh, what's going on? Well, that's what's going on. They're letting that thing cool down. Get the turbine nice and cool, let everything settle down before they're going to shut it off. So I guess I tell you that to when you are out there in the field and you're running somebody's turbocharged aircraft, because if you work in general aviation, hopefully you eventually, doing an annual. If you do an annual, you have to realize, somebody drops off their airplane, hey, you need to do an annual. It's not like you're just going to go get a tug and pull it in or bring it in the shop. You got to go out and run it. You got to do power checks, mag checks, functions, all the systems. So you're out there running it kind of hard. And, you'll take them up to full power on the ground. Well, you don't have a lot of air cool across there. So that engine's getting pretty toasty because it's not getting its cooling. So you're toasting it pretty good. So don't just do that and go, oh, I'm going to drain the oil, pull the mixture out and I'm done. Poor guy spends half his flying career babying his airplane, brings it into a mechanic who just bakes the thing. All right, the Y. Let's see. That one's easy. Provides path to either turbo or overboard. And of course, once it goes to the turbo, it's going to go overboard anyway, so it's all going to end up overboard. All right, so the brains of the operation is the wastegate, providing it has one. Wastegate. Let's pull up a wastegate. There we go. There's a wastegate actuator controller. And I said we're going to talk about a bunch of different types, but for the most part, you can see it's got a spring pulling it one way, and it has a piston in here that is going to operate it the other way. And so we're going to look at what we do with the oil and stuff. But for the most part, we're just going to take hydraulic fluid, if you will, but instead of hydraulic fluid, what kind of hydraulic fluid do we have running around the engine already? Oil. So we just take oil under pressure and run it through controllers and let that oil either come in here and push on this piston or not and let the spring push it back. So it's really that simple. It's so simple. We'll come back to that. All right, wastegate, a valve located in the exhaust line. So valve located in the exhaust. All right. When open, you have to keep this straight. Write it in a card, put it in front of you, because this is going to be the key to it. Say wastegate open, wastegate closed. You got to be able to say what's going on. So when open, exhaust gas, leave exhaust, and bypass turbo. So that is turbo off. Doesn't really turn off. I told you it always has to keep turning, otherwise it gets warped. Yeah, turbo off. So when open. So when closed, exhaust flows to turbo. And it never really closes all the way because you don't want it to get stuck against the housing. So there's always a little gap right there. So exhaust flows to turbo. So that would be turbo on. So when closed, it's on. When open, it's off. Kind of like a switch, I guess. If you open a switch, electricity's off. Yeah.
kind of like in cars, are you able to adjust the wastegate pressure by changing the spring?
No.
Like not when it,
What do you mean by wastegate pressure?
like you can change the wastegate actuator on car.
Yeah, so that you get more boost.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could.
Is it something that you're able to
No,
sign
you are
off?
not.
I was gonna say it's like you're allowed to do is the
Yeah.
question.
Yeah.
So in other words, you have a certificated aircraft, a certificated engine with very specific data, and that has a very specific boost. And so what you're proposing to do is get in there and tweak it a little bit so you get more boost.
Yes.
You can. It's not like you got to take it to a smog station every few years and they're going to check it.
Yeah. Do you get STC for that?
He's right though. I mean, if you could get an STC, then yeah, you could legally do that. If you could get the data together and show that you could increase the boost on an engine by whatever, and you pull out an STC, you could actually do that. D, 3 basic types of wastegates. Basic types of wastegates. Well, this is going to be your favorite, fixed. So, fixed. So it uses an adjustable bolt. I think my notes say screw, but let's be honest, it's a bolt. An adjustable bolt to block a certain amount of exhaust to the turbo, to block a certain amount of exhaust to turbo.
So this has bolt in line with the turbine.
I'll bring a picture up for you. You could put it either in line to the turbine or
wide.
yeah. I'm trying to remember. It's been a long time since I worked on one. Like I said, the Piper Senecas use them. You don't adjust them. I was just there. So it's like, in fact, it was like I went to Lycoming school a couple years ago, whatever. It's been a long time now. And I told you guys all about that.
Yes.
I don't think the teacher liked me very much because so much of what you're...
Definitely didn't like the guy from NASA.
I know, not at all. I tried to be cool about it, but he would ask questions, and I didn't realize they were rhetorical questions that he didn't want an answer to, and I knew the answer, and then he would get mad. So,
Why?
at one point he goes, well, he only knows it because he teaches this stuff, and it's like, and I built engines for a very long time. But, okay, thank you for being nice to me about that. But so I always remember this story, and it was a good one. He caught me on this one. So he was talking about, and it's a little premature maybe for this story, but I'll throw it anyway since I started it. So we're talking about this fixed waste system, and so he says, okay, and so we studied all, and he says, okay, and you kind of understand it. He's like, so now what are you going to do if a customer brings in their aircraft? And like I said, this is on the Senecas, someone I know that uses this since a twin engine. And so when you have a twin engine, you always have a reference. So it makes your life easy and it makes it hard because the pilot will go, well, this one is off by 1/2 inch on that one, so you got to fix it. Like, oh my gosh. If you can't match engines that close hardly, it's very difficult. They're just different animals. But anyway, so he's like, all right, so the pilot brings in their aircraft and it's like, okay, they were matched for the longest time. And now over the last, my flight here, I noticed that it has dropped and dropped and dropped. And now I'm like 2-3 inches lower, we'll say on the right engine. How do you fix that?
It's fixed.
Well,
Not
what-
going to be adjusting.
It's an adjustable bolt to block a certain. So how would you fix it? Adjust the bolt, right? Yeah, I already told you, caught me. Wrong. Why are you adjusting it? What happened?
Thermally eroded.
Something happened to make it change, and it wasn't that bolt because the bolt didn't move. So by you going in there and trying to turn this bolt, you're covering up something that happened. You know, we've got a bearing that's going out of the turbo. It's not moving. We had FOD damage in it. You know, we got to look elsewhere. That was the whole thing. I told you a little early for the story.
It's not like it changed over time, it just changed.
Or even if it changes over time, why did it and the other one didn't? Now, if they both changed together, then we have, you know, wear together. But it shouldn't change.
Once we have like different components that do that, whereas as it ages, you have to adjust, right?
Not on this one.
Well, okay, that's what I'm saying.
I know, but I agree with you. You would think it's like over time, you know, it's like, well, what happens if, you know, you have an engine and, you know, it was brand new out of the crate and it had 70 pounds of pressure, and then you flew it for 4,000 hours and now it's down to 30. Well, yeah, adjust the oil pressure. It's wearing out, you know. So, no, don't adjust that. There's something going on. Yeah, I know what's going on. It's wearing. But it's getting old. But, yeah, that was the whole point. So, all right. Let's see. Then we have fixed. Let me see. Wait a minute. 3-base fixed. Yeah, I don't like what I wrote. So about this. Manual. Manually operated. So I flew in first time I flew in an aircraft that had a manually operated wastegate. It was a camera airplane. It was like just 206, maybe, probably 206. Might have been a 182 actually with the turbo in it. I don't remember anymore. It was a long time ago. I think it was all stripped out. There's nothing in it. And so, you know, the pilot takes the center line and it's manually operated. He just firewalls the throttle all the way in, prop all the way in, and it's got one more knob for the wastegate. Yep. And he just starts dialing it in, and we're just sitting there with, you know, feet on the brakes, the thing's shaking. He just dials it in. Just watch the boost pressure come up, 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 up. It's right about red line, feet off the brakes, and we go. You know, and just, and he's just, you know, kind of adjusting it back as we go, and it's like, yeah, that was it, you know. That's a handful. You got to watch that, you know. So he's adjusting that and manifold pressure and the prop, and, you know, so this is not, like I said, I've only seen one. It was the only airplane I ever saw like that had that. I've never seen another one with a manual operated wastegate, because I don't think I would want that. It's, you know, trust me, right? Even flying just a constant speed, it's a lot to think about. You just add that one more knob, and you're coming in for landing. You got to think about it. It's like, okay, mixture's rich, prop forward, because if you land and your prop's back and you go around, then you have low RPM, high manifold pressure. That's bad for it. So, yeah, it happens. All right, break time.